Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on your location in the world. And welcome everyone to Sweden Innovation Days and this side session that I promise will be as enlightening as it is innovative. Today, we're diving into the topic of neurodesign, a field that sits at the fascinating intersection of neuroscience, architecture and design, and well-being. The spaces we inhabit, from the homes we live in, the offices we work in, and the public spaces we frequent, play a crucial role in our daily experiences. They influence our behaviors, our emotions, and even our health. Neurodesign is the pioneering field that leverages insights from neuroscience and brain research to create environments that promote psychological and physiological well-being and enhance quality of life. And as our urban landscapes and environments continue to evolve, understanding and applying principles of neurodesign has never been more critical. But before we dive into the intricacies of neurodesign, allow me a moment to introduce myself. My name is Alma Jacobsen, and I'll be your moderator for this side session. I work at the Swedish innovation agency, Vinnova, but I also have a background as an architect, meaning that I have a very particular and personal interest in how our environments shape our well-being. So today, I'm not only here to facilitate our conversation, but also to navigate this exploration alongside you, of course. I believe we have a digital audience from various corners of the world, and I hope that you're all eager to explore this pivotal and cutting-edge field of neurodesign. This event is part of Sweden Innovation Days and focuses on how the built environment can impact mental health and quality of life through advanced neuroscience. And in that spirit, we are incredibly fortunate to have with us today a distinguished expert in the realm of neurodesign, Isabelle Sjövall. Isabelle has an impressive background in neurodesign, coupled with extensive expertise in neuroscience as it applies to architecture and the built environment. She is the author of the books Neurodesign and Designfulness, and Isabelle is currently undertaking her doctorate in the new interdisciplinary field of neurodesign at the Faculty of Brain Sciences at the Institute of Behavioural Neuroscience at UCL, University College London. And we at Vinnova are especially thrilled to be funding part of Isabelle's research as her work explores how our human brains react to built environments and illuminates the ways in which we and our physical spaces can influence our cognitive functions, our emotional well-being, and overall quality of life, making significant contributions to how we think about designing our future cities and living spaces. To make the most out of our time with Isabelle, today's session will unfold in two parts. First, we'll have the privilege of hearing from Isabelle herself. She will share her insights and experiences and also offer us a glimpse of the future of neurodesign. Following her presentation, we'll transition into a discussion and together delve deeper into the field of neurodesign. But the conversation doesn't end there. Even though you won't have the opportunity to engage directly with us during today's session, we do want to hear from you and foster a broader dialogue on this transformative topic, as we believe that we can all contribute to shaping environments that better serve our well-being. So please stay with us till the end of this session and look out for the contact details provided on the screen. With that said, let's embark on this exploratory and enlightening journey together. A warm welcome to Isabelle, who is with us directly from London. Isabelle, the stage is all yours.
Good morning from London. Thank you for the introduction. I wonder, can you please put up my slides? Yeah. Could you make the slides a little bit bigger, please? Could you make the slide bigger, please? Great, thank you. Good morning. It's a privilege to be here today to present a little bit about my work. I'm based in London, and I have a passion for understanding how the built environment impact humans psychologically and physiologically. So I'm based at the Institute of Behavioural Neuroscience at University College London. So yes, can I have the next slide, please? So, as you might understand, the foundation of our work is about the human brain, the most complex structure in the known universe. So we're trying to understand how the brain reacts and responds to different types of architecture, design, and different experiences, and various of context globally, basically. Next slide, please. And just to show a little bit about how we work interdisciplinary, these are the domains that we have identified as crucial for the field of neurodesign and how we sort of interact with our environments. So we see these subdomains: cognition, sensory, social, safety and accessibility, naturalness, and emotional. That is the sort of the main focus that we are exploring now within the field of neurodesign. Next slide, please. And just also to visualize how these environments can look in the real world. So we see it's an urban context, of course, but it's also what we have the closest to us, which is interior. So it's basically all the environments that humans are exposed to. So we're looking at, it could be care environments, it could be educational environments, it could be offices, and also public spaces, of course. So we're looking at all these spaces, and sort of the foundation of this is neurobiology and what we all need from a universal level in order to have mental health and quality of life. Next slide, please. So this is also talking about mental health. It's a very complex sort of field, many things interacting and sort of will contribute to mental health and quality of life. But what we can see from the built environment is that these things also connect and they link together. And we're looking at different domains here, how the built environment can impact everything from our thinking, our emotions, how we interact with others, for example, but also within the field of biophilia, in terms of natural environments, green space, and so on. So we see that all these different fields are very important in order to have a good and holistic sort of health, in our opinion. So these are the things that we're particularly interested in researching further. Next slide, please. And the basics, as I mentioned earlier, is neurobiology, and we're looking at it from an evolutionary perspective, which is that our brains and bodies is sort of built for a different life when we lived at the African savanna. But today, of course, many of the environments, they look very different now, and we have a lot of stimuli and a lot of, could be in cities, for example, it's flashing lights and things like that. So we're looking at this, and we also see that people are more stressed in urban environments, and considering what we came from, we don't think that's not odd at all. It makes a lot of sense from a neuro perspective. So that's basically our foundation that we are building our research on. Next slide, please. And the challenge as we see it, where we also are able to make the most impact, is within urbanization. We see that it's been a major shift during the past years, and it's rapidly increasing. The majority of the world population is now living in cities or urban environments, and we see that this is going to increase even further. So we believe that about 70% in just a couple of years' time will be living in urban environment. Next slide, please. And we know that urban environments, they offer a lot of positive things like closeness to culture, to be a part of communities, closeness to education and healthcare and work and everything in terms of that. But we also see that urban environments actually increase the risk of several mental health conditions. So that is concerning when we see the rapid urbanization, because it's not clear why that is. So we just know that there is a correlation between the two. And what we also know is that the amygdala, the fight or flight response in the brain, seems to be more active in urban environments, which, considering the vast amounts of stimuli, we can understand why. But the actual factors behind it needs to be further explored. Sorry, can I have the full slide, please? I can only see. Thank you. And we also know that nature, there's a lot of potential in nature and biophilic design and green infrastructure, because it's not only good for the environments, it's also good for our brains. So we know that nature can have protective effects and help us build resilience, and help us better balance stressors in different environments. So therefore, how we shape and build future environments is a fundamental factor for public health and sustainable development. Next slide, please. And in terms of mental health, I think it's easy just to use it as a concept, but looking at how much suffering it's actually causing globally, we can see here among the very common illnesses that it's a big part of the representation here. We can also see how this drives, how it's connected to the global economy and why it's important that we work more towards prevention within this field. So this is just to illustrate also that it's actually driving a lot of not only suffering, but also losses economically for the world. Next slide, please. Yes, and the design variables, because our work is mainly in prevention and how we can use the environment, because it's not that much explored from an empirical point of view, how the environment can also support health in a population. So we know that natural materials, as I mentioned, that could be a very, very strong positive component of that. We also see green and blue spaces connected to that can also improve and support mental health. But we also see everything around us is sensory information. So we have tactile textures like wood, for example, that it could activate certain chemicals in the brain and the body that can help us to be more calm and to have more positive emotions and so on. And then also we see that the stress levels can actually get better from using biophilic design and green infrastructure. So many, many components of this, it's possible to actually design into our daily lives in quite a practical manner, I would say, if we just learned how to make more conscious choices around this field. And of course, natural daylight, when we have two buildings that are very high-rise buildings, that could also take away some of the natural daylight. That's very important to us. And then also, I know that architects are particularly fond of this regarding beauty and aesthetics, but it's actually also, it has a function for us in terms of happiness and well-being. So I think all of these components needs to be more considered, and we could create better recipes for urban environments if we take this into consideration. Next slide, please. And some of the methods used by us and our colleagues here in London, thanks to neuroscience and development in recent years, there's now possibilities with mobile brain recordings, as seen here on the pictures. And this has created, it's created a shift within neuroscience that can actually also look at real environments and how the brain and the body reacts and responds to those environments. Next slide, please. And the laboratories that we have here in London, Pearl is a unique 4,000 square meter facility where we can measure how people interact with the world, and we can simulate different types of environment in a controlled lab environment, which is fantastic. You can even build up infrastructure and things like that in this vast laboratory. And we use this together with traditional neuroimaging techniques like MRI, where we show different environments to the participants while they're in the scanner, and we look at brain structure and brain function, and how that's. We also look at biomarkers, for example, and how the brain and the body react to different types of stimuli of the environment to draw new conclusions for this field. Next slide, please. And this is a ratio that I find quite interesting. Because it's very common to talk about money when it comes to this, which is understandable. But when we look at it, it's not really the money for the building or the maintenance of a building. The actual cost is actually for the people. If the people are unwell, they are not productive, for example, that is where the cost lies. So I would encourage to sort of try to rethink how we think about budgets in terms of the built environment, since we have so much to gain. If we think a little bit differently, we can make a lot of things better. And I think also in terms of sustainability, in my opinion, human, ecological, and economic sustainability, they cannot be separated. It's a holistic perspective that needs to be undertaken in order to tackle these huge global challenges that we have. Next slide, please. And I think this is quite a interesting example how we will design our future. There are many things that we can do. I see many positive benefits that we can draw from neuroscience and also implement in the real world and translate the research into practical solutions. I think we need to empower architects and designers as well with these elements from neuroscience and other disciplines, of course, in order to build a better world. But I think that the Stockholm Wood City is a good example of when you think big, how it could actually look like. And is this what we're going to see more of in the future with this biophilic environments and this green infrastructure and more natural environments? I certainly hope so. Next slide, please. And just to sort of highlight what neurodesign is all about and the purpose, and it's basically to gain a better understanding how different types of environment and architecture and design impact humans. And also, when we do that, we don't have to be exposed to different environments. We can actually change them with purpose and make them more meaningful and also more aligned with our biological needs. So we can work more preventative with these types of environments and create a better alchemy for the built environments and a better recipe, I believe. So that's basically the foundation and the purpose of neurodesign. Next slide, please. So thank you for listening to this brief introduction about our field. I'm going to hand back the word to Alma now.
Thank you so much, Isabel, and thank you for a lovely presentation. I think it really beautifully illustrates how neurodesign can open up new avenues for thinking about our built environments, almost, as you mentioned, from an evolutionary perspective. And I would like to begin with a question that I think resonates with many of us who are introduced to the field of neurodesign, because I think you could almost on an intuitive level feel the benefits of the design principles that were highlighted in your presentation. So given the intuitive appeal of incorporating elements such as daylight and greenery into our physical spaces, why is it essential to underpin architectural design with neuroscientific facts? Why do we need to validate these intuitive design choices with brain research? Can we just rely on our instincts to be true?
a very good question. In my opinion, I think intuition and science they're very closely linked. And usually in science, you have like a hypothesis or you have a theory, and that actually starts off very often with intuition. And then you build on it and you look at the literature and you look at the previous research, and then you sort of form a new hypothesis how you should go about it and continue the research. I would say that what we can gain, because even if we have intuition, and architects would know this because they work a lot with like sensory information. But I think if you look at other disciplines, for example, in real estate or in properties, they like to calculate things. So I think to get those fields, because we all want the same, the purpose is still the same. But if we want to connect those fields, I think it's very good to also validate them by actually adding doses of things or numbers on things. And I think a lot of things that the architects are doing are very, very, very good. But I think that's also convincing for the people working more with investments and money, that it's not only a feeling, it can actually not only support human health, but also drive better economy and also productivity and creativity and things like that. So I think it's two sides of the same coin, basically.
Could you elaborate a bit on how then you would actually be able to measure these types of developments in our health from a neurodesign perspective?
Well, this is actually the work that we're conducting right now. So I would say the best way, in my opinion, would be an index where you can actually look at different components in the built environments, and you can actually measure the impact, and you can also create a better ratio between them. So yeah, I would say that would be the best way to measure it, and to also create the right dose, but also to put it on connected to the economic part of it.
And I know you're working on developing such an index. Can you tell us a bit more about that work?
Yes, of course. It's basically about drawing on all the science that it has been sort of carried out earlier, what we see in the literature. And we have identified and mapped a few fields, because I think always with environments, it's the purpose of the place. If you're in a hospital, it's healing. If you're in a school, it's about learning and education. And if you're in an office, you want to be productive and maybe creative. So we've sort of had the foundation of the purpose of the place, and then the different components that we all need as humans to have mental health, quality of life, but also be productive in life. So those are the domains that we're working on right now, and very soon we will have some preliminary results to share with the world.
I'm looking forward to taking part of those. I think it's interesting what you said about intuition and science going hand in hand. I think it's really interesting to reflect on how well our instincts actually align with these types of scientific findings, because in my mind, intuition could almost be seen as like a product of millions of years of human evolution, and being a good foundation for making quick decisions that are actually based on deep and ancestral knowledge. But where does it not work in the context of our modern society, would you say, and where do we actually need to elevate science more within these fields and when we design our urban environments?
It's a very good question. I would say we sometimes get stuck on the money and the money here and now, and we don't think about the impact and the gains or the losses we can make in the future if we don't think about making things better now. So I think it's about flipping the budget, basically. But that's difficult because that's also how our brains work, that we're sort of made for like we want to have the good things very quickly, and we don't like to make decisions that hurt, put more money now because we don't see what we will have for it later. So I think that's a good example of how our brains sometimes can trick us.
I would like for us to linger just a bit on the conflict between our human biology and our modern society, because reflecting on human evolution, our environments have significantly influenced our social behaviors and emotional health. And modern urban environments, as you mentioned, they are often characterized by neurological and sensorial stress due to overstimulation and even isolation, which really stands in contrast with the settings in which our social and empathetic capacities has developed over millions of years. So, Isabel, as you highlighted in your presentation, we're witnessing actually an increase in mental health in urban environments. We also know that, and there are large numbers of depression and a significant number of young people that are actually relying on medication for mental health challenges. And there is also some research which I find quite interesting, pointing to a decline in empathy levels, potentially aggravated, and we don't know that, but there are speculations that it might be aggravated by increased screen time and social media interaction. And I think it's obvious to say that neurodesign has the potential to counteract some of these challenges. But I would also like us to touch on the potential side effects of improved mental health. Do you think that intentional design of physical spaces that can alleviate neurological stress and also accommodate neurodiversity can do more than just bolster mental health and so on, also leading to potential a decline in crime rates, for example, or solving other societal challenges?
As you mentioned, I mean, mental health is it's complex and multifaceted. So I think there isn't a simple solution, but I do think that since our behaviors and our emotions and also how we interact with others, that's very, very closely linked to the environment that we are in. So I do think that if we have better environments where we feel more safe, we can trust others more, we are calmer, then we will also behave better. So in that term, I absolutely think it could be part of the solution.
Yeah. Do you have any concrete examples where you can actually see those types of results in different urban areas? Is there any data or research that shows that you are less violent, for example, in areas where you would have more greenery, for example?
There is some research that you're more altruistic when you feel more connected to nature. So that's where I think not only that nature can actually change the structure and the function of the brain in some context. I think if that can also make us better with other people, that's huge potential that we haven't yet explored. But I would love for the future to do more research within this field. Of course, there is some studies showing that if you children growing up where they look at concrete or bricks, for example, they are less altruistic and less social and more aggressive towards their neighbors and less helpful. So that is something that I definitely think we should look at and how the environment can support good behavior and positive behaviors and how we can reduce some of the bad things that the environment can also do.
And considering the global tensions that we now see, we have different conflicts and a general feeling of anxiety, perhaps. Do you think that the principles of neurodesign could potentially promote some sort of harmony and peace in the world? I'm not sure if it's stretching it a bit now, but do you think that neurodesign could even be leveraged as a diplomatic or humanitarian tool to improve our collective mental health, also enhance resilience amongst individuals, maybe tackle global health emergencies such as pandemics, or or even mitigate and prevent conflicts and wars? It's a big
That's a
question.
very good question. Yeah, it's a very big question. I was going to say that. I do think that neurodesign can be one solution out of many. But I think it's important also to be careful about this because it is very complex and many things, many factors that will sort of impact these very, very, difficult situations, of course. But from a neurobiological sort of, if we look at it from that perspective, I do think that sometimes we focus too much on where we are different rather than what's universal, what's human, and what we all need to sort of unite around that. Because I think that's much more positive, and it's also it's more pragmatic in a way. And it doesn't mean that we can't be different. It's just that we are choosing to focus on the things that we all need. And then, of course, you can have your differences on top of that. It's like different dimension as I see it.
Yeah, I think that angle is quite interesting because when you talk about these types of principle, it's easy to think that we sort of come up with solutions that fits everyone and like a one-size-fits-all solution. So could you just elaborate a bit about how you can include the diverse perspectives that individuals might have into these principles?
Yeah, I think these sort of universal components, like, for example, then nature or recovery or we need togetherness and things like that. I would say that's very universal that we all need in order to be healthy and be well. But then, of course, if we talk about, it could be age differences, it could be cultural differences, but it could also be neurodiversity that I think we need to. We also need to explore more how these varieties can also be more included in design, because we see now that most environments, they have been designed for neurotypical individuals. And we know that between 10 to 15% of the population is neurodiverse. So I think we have a lot to gain exploring that field further, actually, and look at how different individuals can be affected by sensory information.
Yeah, that's really interesting, I think. I would like us to move on to talk about the technology associated with this field, and you mentioned it as well, that if it wouldn't be for the monumental strides really that has been made in recent years with brain scanning and so on, this type of research wouldn't be possible. But I would also like to just explore other types of emerging technologies, such as virtual reality, for example. We now have huge strides being made within artificial intelligence, and also the domain between brain-computer interfaces, with the potential, to control our digital devices with only the power of our thought, with perhaps a simple brain implant. All of these technologies have the potential to open up new avenues for exploring the brain's response to physical spaces. So I'm wondering if you can just give us your thoughts about what new challenges, what new opportunities the integration of these advanced technologies might pose for the human experience of our physical spaces, and also how they can be incorporated into the field of neurodesign.
I think in terms of cost efficiency for studies, for example, I think VR is sometimes a good alternative. However, I do think since cognition is embedded and we also use our bodies to pick up on sensory information. So I think it could be a very, very good complement. And I think the technology, it's fantastic. And especially now in the age of AI, where we can actually also predict a lot of things, and we can speed up processes and things like that. So I think it comes with many opportunities, but also I think I think we shouldn't forget about sort of our origins and also the sort of the biological side of things, because I think if we lose that, um, it's very easy to get lost in this world. I think we need both sides.
Mm. And do you think with the increasing use of virtual environments, do you think that there is an increasing risk for humans to actually become more screened off then, both from each other and from our surroundings?
That's a very good question. I think it depends on the context. For example, I heard about the use of VR, for example, for patients in palliative care, which they can't go on a final trip, but then you can use VR and you can have their relatives and they can go sort of on a trip from the hospital together. I think that's an example of like a fantastic use of VR, right? How you can go into that world. But I do think, obviously, there are a lot of scientists working with, I mean, how screens and how social media and everything is sort of impacting us, and especially, I mean, children and young people who are more sort of vulnerable. So I think it needs to be better balanced, basically, and to always think about the purpose where you are using the things. But it's a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, that would be a nice way to go with actually being able to see your relatives.
Yeah.
That's a really good use of that type of technology for sure. I would like us to just look into the future a bit before we end our conversation. And considering what you mentioned before with the rapid urbanization and mental strain associated with urban living, I'm really excited about the potential of neurodesign within this field. And I would like us also to just think about the evolution of the way we see conventional functional spaces. What are your thoughts on where we see the future of neurodesign in 5 to 10 years? Could there be like a future where buildings and urban environments adapt in real time even to the neurological feedback of their occupants? Would that be a scenario?
That's a very good question. I mean, when we have the technology, I guess, I mean, anything is possible. What I do hope to see is that we use the science and we get better at also choosing ourselves. So, for example, if you're stressed, that we have spaces within different environments. It could be schools, it could be offices or public spaces or urban spaces where we can actually ourselves also go to that. Maybe it's a park or maybe it's somewhere where you can feel you can rest for a bit, and at the same time, if you feel that you want to be energized, where can you go, where can you sort of get that type of stimuli? So I'm hoping that we will have a better variation that would be more aligned with our biological needs and how our brains and our bodies work, but that also that we will have on the fundamental level, that we will have a higher level of knowledge, so that we can also use the science in a better way, and we can implement it in our lives in the way that will suit us. So everyone can't do everything, but that we can actually use the things that are useful for us on different levels and in different contexts.
I know there is some research showing that patients in hospitals, for example, recover many times faster when they can see nature outside their window or have plants in their rooms or those types of things. Could you just elaborate a bit on the potential, the short-term and long-term socioeconomic gains that might arise by implementing these principles?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good example of conscious design choices. It doesn't necessarily have to be more expensive. It's just that you have to make those choices based on the research and you make use of it. And I think not only have you get faster recovery, you have less medications, you also have more positive notes in your journal at the hospital. So I think there are many parts of that can actually be implemented. Yeah, so I think, I mean, only from that, having a view, you would have three very positive effects. And if you scale it, what could happen then? And I think, I mean, if you would think about learning environments in the same way, or work environments, that you would have better productivity or creativity, which are important factors for society and development. I mean, that's also a lot can be gained from that, I believe. So I think there's a lot of potential and positivity in this.
NeuroDesign really sits at the intersection of architecture and neuroscience and technology. What would you say are the most significant barriers to these types of cross-disciplinary collaboration in this field? And what do architects and neuroscientists need to do in order to make this movement in the right direction for this field of research?
It's a very interesting question. I would say, in my opinion, because I've had the privilege to work with both architects and, doctors in hospitals, for example, but also with property developers and property owners. You then usually you have your perspective, which is normal, I would say. But I think it's quite rare that you meet and that you try to be curious about the other, because you basically have the same purpose, you just don't know it sometimes. So I would say to work more closely together and try not to be fixed in your position from your perspective. Try to be open, try to listen, because then I think if we can bridge that, I think there's so much to gain.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I just hope that everyone is as curious as you are within this field. Time flies when you're having fun. I want to thank you so much, Isabel, for your invaluable contribution to this field, and so much. Thank you so much for our conversation today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. As we draw this enlightening session to a close, I want to take a moment to reflect on today's session. We've delved into the fascinating intersection of neurodesign, human evolution, and the environments that shape our mental and emotional well-being. We've explored how our intuitive understanding, owned over millions of years, complements the rigorous insights provided by contemporary science to create spaces that are not only respect our evolutionary past, but also embrace the complexities of our present and future. And our discussion today really underscores the transformative potential of neurodesign. It's a field that not only bridges the gap between intuition and science, but also offers innovative solutions to the pressing challenges of modern societies and the need for genuine human connection in an increasingly digital world. And as we move forward, I hope that we can carry with us the understanding and that our environments play in shaping our experiences and well-being. So I want to again extend my heartfelt thanks to Isabel for her expertise and to each of you listening in today. Please feel free to reach out to us if you wish to discuss this topic further. It's your curiosity and engagement that make this work possible. And if you want to hear more from Isabel, she'll be taking part in a panel on main stage at 3:40 p.m. Central European Time in a discussion about the role of civil society for citizen engagement's contribution to system innovation. Thank you once again for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing how the insights gained here will inspire action within this field. Thank you so much.